Hello, my name is Faz Kareem, and I'm with Learnit. And today I have a very interesting video. If you've clicked on this, you probably know what you're in store for. We're here to learn about the new Excel XLOOKUP function, which all Office 365 subscribers have. If you have Office 2019, you have it. And if you also picked up the newest release of Office, which is called Office 2021, which was released on October 5th, you will also see that XLOOKUP is available there. It's a new function in our function library. A wide range of functions were released in this iteration. The unique function, the sort by function, the sort function, the filter function, the let function, a lot of really cool new functions that we have access to. But one of the most commonly used database functions that we have is our VLOOKUP, which we now have a newer version of, XLOOKUP. Don't worry, for my VLOOKUP fans, it's not going anywhere. You just may want to hear a little bit about this new function in town. Now in this next hour or so, I want to cover quite a few details with XLOOKUP. I'm going to do a comparison of XLOOKUP compared to the VLOOKUP we all know. It's okay if you don't, we're going to see it today. And I also want to compare it to another function known as index and match. Once we get the hang of learning the syntax, that's what we call it, of the XLOOKUP function, I do want to dive in and show you different examples of using XLOOKUP. Maybe you have an approximate match where you don't really know exactly what you're looking for, but you have something close to it. There's a certain setting or a parameter or argument that you can change to set that up. We'll show you an example of that. Or maybe you're looking for multiple values within a data set, not just a single value. How can the XLOOKUP return multiple values with one function, which will eventually just spill into other surrounding cells? Last but not least, I do want to cover an example of doing a two-way search with an XLOOKUP, where for the return array, the argument called return array, we can just run another function. That function will be XLOOKUP. Don't worry, it'll all make sense if none of that made sense yet. If you are enjoying these videos, there's a ton on Excel. Excel Beginner, the Advanced, the Expert. Don't forget to like, and if you do want to get updates, subscribe. If you're looking to earn any certificates or watch these videos without ads, you can sign up for Learnit Anytime. That's actually Learnit's dedicated online training subscription service. I'll put the link for that inside the description if you want more info on it. Now don't forget, if you do have any questions, you are more than welcome to join offsite. Now this is a community that we've put together. I will put the link in the description if you want to check it out, where you can post your questions for me or any other instructors to answer. Now, as always, if you haven't taken a course before with this YouTube, the exercise file that I'll be using in the video will be in the description. Now, with that being said, I'm getting pretty excited here. Hopefully you are too. Let's get saddled up and ready to dive into Excel 2021 XLOOKUP. So, I went ahead and I've opened up the Excel workbook that comes included with the course. Be sure to download that. If you haven't, pause the video and go get it downloaded, because there will be parts in these videos that I would like you to pause and practice, especially with these cool new functions that we're going to talk about. Now, before we dive into the XLOOKUP and learning about the syntax, let's talk about something, a good old friend of ours, the VLOOKUP function. Now, the VLOOKUP, the V stands for vertical, essentially allows us to use a vertical column of information to return another column of information, or a value from another column, I should say, using that vertical column. So the V stands for vertical. Now, in order to actually successfully fill out a VLOOKUP, there are 4 arguments that you have to know how to fill out. And if you don't know what an argument is, it's the thing inside the parenthesis. The 4 arguments for my VLOOKUP. Now, for the VLOOKUP, there's actually a lot of guidelines that we have to follow for each argument. Let me run through them very quickly. Now, I want to look through this movie list and return the ratings for certain movies that I want to look up. Now, in the VLOOKUP, when you fill out your first argument, the lookup value, this lookup value must be located in the very first column of the table array of the data set that you would like to search through. So I've already met that requirement. I have a movie title in the first column. But if it wasn't, I'd have to move around my data or use whatever first column comes available. After that, it's actually asking for a third thing, a third argument called the column index number. Now, the column index number is a position within the actual table array. And it's the position of the column that holds the value that you would want to see returned. So if you wanted to actually see the rating return, that's the second column in the data set. The runtime would have been the third. Years the fourth, genres the fifth. The release date's the sixth, and the director would be the seventh, but it's kind of covered by that text box. So this led to issues for many years where people would have to either lock the worksheet or tell people to not insert additional columns. Because if you added in a new column, you automatically will break or switch the column index numbers and shift them over one. Now, that wasn't the only issue people had with this VLOOKUP function. There was also an issue with the fact that the last argument was optional. The range lookup, you didn't need to fill it out. But if you didn't fill it out, it was set to search through the list and return an approximate match. If it doesn't find exactly what you're looking for, it'll return the closest thing to it, which usually isn't something we're looking for. I don't want the movie rating for another movie that's similar in name title or right below it in the list. I would actually have to put in the word false to look for an exact match or the number 0. Otherwise, it would default to that true. Now, the XLOOKUP has fixed a lot of these rules here, a lot of these guidelines that we have to follow. Let me fill out a VLOOKUP first using these guidelines, where my lookup value has to be in the first column. I'm going to use the title of the movie. I'm going to hit comma now. My table array, this chunk of data, a list or table that has 2 or more columns, I'm going to highlight this. Now, there's easy ways to highlight things, and there's hard ways to highlight things, or long ways to highlight things. I want you to learn about this shortcut here to highlight into a certain direction. So you can highlight all 7 columns very quickly. And then once you reach the end here of the 7 columns, you can always use another shortcut. The same shortcut, but this time you'll use a down arrow to go all the way down, getting all the movie titles and all the data from the columns itself. Cool, let me use these 2 shortcuts here. And now that I have all 93 rows and 7 columns, I've successfully grabbed my table array. I have to tell Excel what column I want returned. So if it's the movie rating, I'd have to choose 2. And I hit comma here. And remember, true is approximate match, which is the default if I leave it blank. So I will have to put in false. If I put this and hit enter, I'll see that it returned the rating. The cell is formatted as currency. Let me fix that there. Put it to general. But as you can see, I've returned the rating number for the second column position that matches the row value for Venom. So that's a VLOOKUP. something we've had for quite a while. It has 4 arguments. The last one is optional, but the setting for it, the default setting for it, many don't like. But we've gotten used to these rules and guidelines. We remember to lock the worksheets and not let people insert columns when sharing. But then Office released an update where we have a newer function known as XLOOKUP that does the same thing with a lot less rules and guidelines. Now it looks like there's a lot of arguments to fill out with the XLOOKUP. We'll talk about it next. But there's actually only 3 required ones. So I do want you to spend a moment here, and I want you to spend some time practicing the VLOOKUP, just to have that in your tool belt. So this is not going anywhere. But coming up next, I want to compare this to the new version, the XLOOKUP, which has a different syntax compared to VLOOKUP that I prefer much more, and many do, just because it's much simpler to fill out. So go ahead and practice this VLOOKUP function here. You should pause the video at this point in time so you can see the formula on the screen. But don't forget to come back where we can compare this to the XLOOKUP function that we want to learn about. Now that we've seen a little bit of the VLOOKUP, let's spend some time covering the XLOOKUP, which looks at first like it has a lot more to fill out. But I want to remind you that the last 3, remember they're in brackets, they're optional arguments that don't need to be filled out in order to complete the function. Now the XLOOKUP is a very simple function to fill out in a sense that it only asks for 3 things that are required. It asks for a lookup value, a value that I want to use to search through the list of movies. This value doesn't need to be located in any certain position. It can be in the first column, it can be in the last column. Hopefully it is a column that holds unique values though, so it can return the correct item that you're looking for. In our case, I want to use the movie title. I just picked the first one from the list. After, it actually asks you, where can I actually find this value? And then that's when we do our little magic and we highlight the lookup array, which is the column it can find the location of the lookup value in. And of course, I'm a big fan of shortcuts to highlight things. So I'll just select the first cell and use Control-Shift down to grab that lookup array there. Now my return array, that's the return array. It's the column that I want returned that holds the value that I'm looking for. So I want the ratings returned. So I'm going to highlight that. Control-Shift down. Now remember, the Control-Shift down shortcut will stop when it meets a blank. I click it again, it stops when it meets a blank. So, with that being said, you might want to grab this column by hand and drag it all the way down, since our shortcut meets these blanks, and it might not include the whole list. Be careful about that when you're dealing with data sets that you export and import into Excel. Happens quite commonly. Now, if it's not found in the list, I just want it to say not found. We have even error handling. That's optional. You don't have to include that. Now we have the option of doing an exact match search. That's the default mode. But if we put -1, it searches for an exact match and it'll return the smallest, the next smallest item if it doesn't find it. Or I can do an exact match and return the next largest item. Of course, if I put the number 2, I can start using wildcards very interesting practice there where we use a certain symbol like a star, a question mark, a tilde to search for a certain amount of characters or a single character from a string that we're looking through. Here, I'll do an exact match here for 0, although I didn't need that. And the last argument, it's a search mode argument that's optional, but it determines how the function will search through the list from the top or the bottom. It will do a binary search, has to be sorted in ascending order, descending order. Here, I'll just go ahead and set that from first to last to look through it from the first item there. And when I hit enter, it ends up finding and returning the row value that matches the lookup values row. So these are both found in position number 1 of the list, and it returned it there. Pretty cool, pretty cool. I mean, I do want to remind you that these last 3 did not need to be filled out. I can very well just do these 3 here and hit enter, and the XLOOKUP will work just as good as my VLOOKUP. And it fixes the situation where if I insert a column, my VLOOKUP breaks because now it's not looking in the correct column. My XLOOKUP is looking directly in the return array column that we specified, no matter what. Go ahead and practice this. When we do come back, I want to talk about one more function called the index and match that does the same thing as these two, but this is 2 functions that we use to deliver the same result. And before XLOOKUP, a lot of people would use index and match to alleviate themselves from all these guidelines and rules that the VLOOKUP had for its users. Go ahead and practice XLOOKUP. Come back where we're going to talk about index and match. Now there's one more function that does a very similar task. Well, there's 2 that we conjoin together. We nest them together. The index and the new xmax function that we're going to talk about. Now essentially, we're going to fill out some arguments, the first one being from the index function, an array. This array is going to hold the values that we want returned. So it's a column that holds the values that we want returned. We want ratings to be returned. All this index function does is it makes this list searchable by, we'll just pretend, by it adding a number next to each one of these cells. Michael, cut that hiccup out. Hopefully that doesn't continue, but I had a hiccup. Now, once it adds these numbers here, that's when we actually use the xmax function to find a lookup value and a lookup array. These last 2 arguments of how it searches through the list and the match mode are optional. So let's fill out an index and match here. I'm going to index the values that I'm looking for, the values that I want returned, the ratings. And when I get that, now when I hit comma, I'm going to nest in my xmatch, which looks for a lookup value. I'm going to use the movie title Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And then it asks for a lookup array, a column that I can search through to find the lookup value. So essentially what we've done here, I can close it here and close both parentheses, remember, to complete the formula. But essentially what we've done is we're looking through the ratings and we're assigning an index number to it, each one. Then we're telling xmatch to go down this list, and we want it to find the movie title. And it so happens to find it on the first row of this list. So this returns the number 1, which my index is going to return the first position of the column, which is B8, which is number 1. Put that all together, when I hit enter here, I'll get 6.1 for the 3rd time using my index and match function this time. My index and match. Here, let me give you a better zoom into the formula there. Go ahead and pause the video. Practice filling out the index and match. If you haven't yet, pause the video and fill out the XLOOKUP. And if you haven't, make sure to fill out that VLOOKUP there and pause the video here if you need to. When we come back, I do want to talk about a few other examples of the XLOOKUP, using different variations, maybe an approximate match search, how to have it return or spill multiple values, and how to do a two-way search there. Now, just like with our VLOOKUP function, there are going to be certain situations with the XLOOKUP as well where you want to look for an approximate match, where the exact value you are looking for does not reside in this list. Like, for example, we have a list tracking the quantities being sold and the amount of discount a person will get depending on the quantity they purchased. So if they purchase 50 or more, they get 15%. But if it hits 100, we'll give them a 20% discount on the items. Now this user here, they received 57. So if I do a XLOOKUP, where I use the lookup value, 57, and I use the lookup array here, the quantities, and I want to return the discounts, I'll put error checking for not found. I have exact match here. Or the next smaller item, or the next larger item. Here, let me put the next smaller item, -1, and I'll close out the parenthesis there. And it gives me 50, 7, 50. That'll give me 15%. If I change that number to the number 1, the next largest item will be returned. It rounds up, essentially. It'll give me the 20%, which is not correct. I'm going to do a -1 there. Good stuff. Now keep in mind, if I did not put this value in, it would return the not found error checking that I have put in for it. So if I were to do this with a VLOOKUP, just so you know, it's very similar in process, where you highlight, this time you have to highlight the entire table array and specify that you want the second column. And in this case, you can just leave it blank because it defaults to approximate match. 15%. Let me change this back to exact match smaller item, so that way it does the same thing. Cool. So go ahead and practice doing an approximate match search. Remember, -1 returns the smallest value. A +1 returns the next largest value using XLOOKUP. And if you need a refresher for VLOOKUP, go ahead and practice this one too. Coming up next, I want to talk about using XLOOKUP to return multiple values, to return the first name, last name, and department with one function. Very interesting here. Now, something really cool about the XLOOKUP is that it can return multiple values with a single function. Let me explain. I want to look through this list and I want to return the ID number, or I want to return the first name that matches the ID number 249, and the last name and the department. I want to do all three of these. Now with our VLOOKUP and our index and match methods, you're going to have to do this one by one. You're going to have to do 3 different functions where the column index number is going to change. For the first name, it's 2, and you're going to do an exact match. And then when you do the last name, you're going to do another whole VLOOKUP just to do it, but you're just going to change one value from within. And that's 3 for the column index number. And of course, just to be safe, we're going to do an exact match. And of course, if we have to do a VLOOKUP, we're going to have to do the third one and change the column index number to 4 so that it returns the correct department. And it looks like it did a job well done. It did that, but I have to do it separately. Here, I'm going to do an XLOOKUP, and I'm just going to do it on the bottom here. I'll write XLOOKUP here. And for this XLOOKUP, I'm going to use the same lookup value. And I'm going to highlight just a single column and can find the lookup value. But for the return array, that's one or more columns. I can highlight all 3 columns. And if I close my parenthesis here and hit enter, it will actually spill these results into the corresponding cells. Now, this is known as an array function here. Notice how it won't let me delete these cells. They're grayed out. It's like you have to delete this one in order to delete the spill of this cell. Keeps coming back to this here. If I delete this, it goes away though. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully you're having fun. I do want you to practice this though. The XLOOKUP way and the VLOOKUP way, it doesn't hurt. But go ahead and pause the video on this screen if you need to. Before I move on to the last example that I have, a XLOOKUP two-way search there. So a cool example of XLOOKUP that I saved for the very end is how to do a two-way search. where I want to look for a certain material from one list, and I also want to look for a certain group from another list, and I want to return the value that matches that row. An XLOOKUP can do that easily with nesting. Let's start out with the wood here, and I want to find wood from this, not that list, this list. Now, I don't want to fill out this yet, the return array. I don't know what I want to return. I have to look through group B. So I'm going to run another XLOOKUP that looks through group B using the rows. Also does a horizontal search. And it's going to return a value, an array from this list here. So essentially, I'm going to close out both of these. This XLOOKUP returns column B. This XLOOKUP will return the wood value for column B, giving us that single value there. I always like showing the evaluate formula tool with examples that are a little bit more complicated with nesting inside the formulas tab, just to show you how Excel solves it. Because it looks like it's going to solve the XLOOKUP in the front first, but it originally is going to start with this one here. It's just going to show you the values within the lookups. Evaluate, it's going to look for wood here. Okay, but in order to do that, in order to return wood, it has to look for the return array. So the return array part's going to trigger itself first. Now this XLOOKUP is going to look for B from this list, and it's going to return these values. And look what it did. C5 to C9. It returned C5 to C9. Now it's going to look for wood in this list, and it's going to return the corresponding value that matches from this list. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool, I know. Practice this one here. This is nesting. We use the evaluate formulas tool to figure out how the equation solved itself. And when you're done, give yourself a pat on the back for nailing this new Excel function known as XLOOKUP. Now hopefully you have it in your tool belt with a few other examples that we just ran through using this new function. Go ahead and practice and come back. Congratulations on completing Excel 2021 XLOOKUP. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. Now in this past 30 minutes or so, we did cover the basics of XLOOKUP, comparing it to VLOOKUP, and going through index and match. So we learned 3 functions there. The newest one was XLOOKUP. From there, we ran through various examples of using XLOOKUP, one being set to approximate match, the -1 and 1, one using multiple values by understanding that the return array can have more than one column. And last but not least, we did an XLOOKUP with a two-way search where we can look vertically and horizontally and nest the functions together. I hope you did enjoy this video. Don't forget to join offsite if you have any questions. This class and many others on YouTube are provided by Learnit. Be sure to check out our website there. Thank you all so much.